I mean, EVE Online is kind of hard to understand for most people, even gamers, because it's so radically different from other MMOs. Most MMOs are what are known as could be called as theme park MMOs, like World of Warcraft, where there's kind of more of a PvE, player versus environment centered experience, where there's kind of a guide rail for your progression through the game. In EVE Online, the PvE content is deliberately bad and deliberately easy because it's meant to be basically an easy grind to obtain in-game currency that can be used for funding the PvP part of the game, which has always been the central focus of EVE. I mean, you look at other MMOs, if you went into a World of Warcraft guild and, joined them, gained their confidence, were given director roles in it, and then stole all their assets, deprived them of everything of value, disbanded their alliance and cost them everything they had, you would be banned. In EVE Online, they make a trailer about the game about you.
Yeah, CCP comes to your house and high-fives you.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, scamming other players is explicitly allowed in EVE Online. I mean, this is a game where the learning curve is so vertical that the in-game tutorials in the beginning part of the game teach you absolutely nothing relevant. Like, you have no choice, but as a new player, but to join corporations that exist explicitly to recruit new players and teach you how to actually play the game.
Because the tutorial does not help.
Because it's useless. Because they don't teach you anything about player versus player combat, and that's where the whole game is centered. I mean, this is a game where, in all MMOs, there's kind of a storyline that tells you about, what's going on and why everything exists the way it does. I mean, that kind of fluff exists in EVE as well. But the difference is that in EVE, that fluff doesn't really matter. The storyline of EVE is actually really created by the players themselves.
Well, sorry, I'm going to just cut in for a second.
Go ahead.
Even if you actually download the game and watch the opening cinematic to the game, it has very little to do with the setting and a lot more to do with how you playing the game will impact the game. Even in the trailer, they're telling you that this game is based on whatever you want to do, you can do it. And you are the game, and
yeah, I mean,
the shit that is in the background doesn't matter.
One of the major differences between EVE and most MMOs is rather than having separate servers, EVE is a shared environment between the entire player base. So you have between 25 and 35,000 people coexisting simultaneously in the 5,000 plus solar systems that make up the EVE universe. And there are large swaths of this universe that are what they call sovereignty space, where players player corporations and alliances and larger coalitions can actually claim vast swaths of territory by taking it from other player corporations. And so what really becomes the central narrative of the game is actually the shared experiences of all the players in sovereignty space and in nullsec more generally, which is the part of the game that's like the Wild West, where you can attack whoever you want. And sort of the shared narrative comes in large part between the shared experiences between these people fighting each other over vast swaths of territory, and the politics and the infighting and the egos that battle for dominance and income streams in this game, rather than about the sort of story created by the game makers.
Right. And I mean, Lorenzo just mentioned, I actually play Star Wars: The Old Republic, and the difference that I can just tell you from playing EVE, I only played a very small amount of EVE. In a new area, in a noob system where I started, I don't know if there's more than one, whatever. The one that I started in, there was nobody. There was me and two other noobs in the solar system running the tutorial. I didn't see anybody else. The server's telling me there's 30,000 people on this. Nobody was there with me because the new players that get into EVE that know what they're doing immediately join a corp and get the fuck out of the noob area. You don't stay there. The tutorials teach you nothing. Whereas in the Old Republic, you roll a new character now, you go into a noob area, there's fucking 20 fucking people playing.
Yeah. Well, right, but that's
But in a theme park MMO, the tutorial is basically teaching you how to play the whole game. Whereas in EVE, the tutorial teaches you nothing.
Well, right, but the tutorial can't teach you anything in EVE because there's so many different ways to play EVE.
Yeah.
I mean, granted, my personal approach, I'm obsessed with the PvP aspect of the game to the exclusion of everything else, right? But there are people who play EVE who do nothing but buy resources that other people, actually mostly bots, mine and build ships and resources and modules that go into those ships and actually sell them to other players. The in-game economy in EVE is so well developed that the game maker, CCP, has actually hired real-world economists to study the in-game economy and print like quarterly newsletters about it.
And that's the thing, like in the Old Republic, like you go to the Galaxy terminal where you're supposed to be able to trade across servers and shit. There's nothing. Like nobody's doing the crafting system. The crafting system's really good. Like it's actually a really cool system. You can upgrade like the stuff that you build so that like the more you build a certain object and deconstruct it, you'll get better at building that object. So like you can learn a green item, deconstruct it up all the way up to like a purple item, and then you could sell that purple item for level like 12 character for like crazy money. But nobody does that because it's like it just doesn't happen. Whereas in EVE, everything's built by somebody.
Right. The vast majority, I mean, not everything, but the vast majority of the modules and ships in EVE are actually built by players.
And the player-built stuff is actually better.
Yeah. For the most part, accepting certain things, but there's people in this game who do nothing but the industrial stuff, like they're a fucking stockbroker in EVE, and measure their success and failure purely by how much of the in-game currency they make. Where there's so many different playstyles possible in the sandbox of EVE that it's like there's thousands of players pursuing completely different playstyles. So it's like a tutorial can't cover all of that. Yeah.
Because the game is player driven. Sorry, not character.
Right. I mean, the game's also really hard. I mean, you got to understand. Like, this is a game where you cannot play. Well, you can play by yourself if you're good and know what the hell you're doing. But in order to get to the point of being good enough to, especially PvP by yourself, you have to have already gone through the stage of playing for months and probably years with other people to actually learn enough about the game and get good enough at it to actually be able to go fight other people by yourself on a regular basis. It's kind of it's really an interesting game. And, I really enjoy the kind of the sandbox aspect of it. And I really enjoy the PvP-centric experience of it. One of the greatest things, though, with EVE Online is that rather than acquiring skills based on an XP system that depends on the time you actually spend in-game playing the game, the skill system is based on a 24-hour training queue that works even when you're not logged in, which makes that your character gets better at stuff basically as a function of how long you've been subscribed, mostly, as opposed to how long you spend in-game, which kind of puts you on a more even playing field against basement-dwelling neckbeards who can spend 80 hours a game playing. So that if you only have time to play a few hours a week, it won't necessarily put you at such a big disadvantage in terms of what your character is capable of.
And there's an app. So you can do your skills on an app. You don't actually have to log into the fucking game.
Well, no, you can see what your skills are on the app, but to actually update them, you have to log in.
You can keep tabs on it with an app. You don't actually have to log in.
No, it's good because it means that, like, for myself, I'm in a stage of my life now where I'm going back to school to pursue finish off a master's degree, but I have the ability, I have time to play a couple hours a night, generally speaking, between roughly 10 and 1 a.m. But that's Monday to Thursday, pretty much. That's it. So it's like it's less than 10 hours a week, mostly 10, 15 hours a week that I can play. But that doesn't penalize me versus somebody who has time to play 40 or 50 hours a week, which is, I think, a really good thing that's in this game compared to other MMOs.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, a lot of other MMOs that I've played, essentially, if you disappear for a week or even a month, sometimes it'll be you'll just fall behind so far that it's just I don't even feel like you'll stop. You'll feel like you don't even want to play anymore.
And that is something that happens. Even with my smuggler, I was in a guild, and like I said, I haven't really been playing my smuggler because mostly when I play now, I play with my girlfriend. I logged into my smuggler one night when I had an hour to kill just to see what was going on, and everybody in my guild was level 50, and I barely recognized fucking maybe 3 people in the fucking 80 people that were in my guild, and they were all level fucking 50s. And I was okay, I'm level fucking 22.
Yeah, one of the other like major differences with EVE Online is in terms of the. I mean, personally, I don't really get involved in the sovereignty warfare stuff where people are fighting over like large parts of the territory in EVE. But like a lot of people are really interested in that, and in that part of the game, you can see people. You can see battles over territory over particular systems that have over 1,000 people on each side. I mean, this is a scale of kind of epic battles that you are not going to see in any other MMO. I mean,
is it as epic as like the people? What was it, like the 42 people who were fighting that one Final Fantasy 11 boss for like 48 hours, and then they started vomiting and passing out?
It's actually grander than that. I mean, you got to understand. One of the things you got to understand in EVE is there's a progression in terms of the scale of the ships that you can fly and how big they are and how much damage they can do and what kind of impact they can have on the scale of a battle. Starting from frigates, which would essentially be something the size that would have a 5-man crew, about the size of, say, like a 747, all the way up to ships that are called Titans that absolutely dwarf any other ship in the game. They're known as kind of a class of ships known as super capitals that would be like thousands of times the size of a frigate and able to literally destroy a ship with each shot of its main weapons. So when you have fights of 1,100 people versus 1,100 people, you can have people drop in like 50 or 60 super capitals and start to absolutely annihilate opposing fleets at the rate of like each shot killing somebody. And so, and these can often be decisive battles over control of particular systems or entire regions of the game. I mean, the narrative of EVE is really ultimately centered around these sort of epic battles for control of territory.
Yeah, and that's another huge difference. Like when you play other MMOs, usually like the max size group is 25-man raids. This is like hundreds of people.
I've seen some other pretty big stuff. Like, I've already said this before, but I've personally played like Ragnarok Online before, and there was like territory control wars and stuff. And sometimes there was battles like featuring like sides of hundreds of people on both sides, but not thousands of people on both sides.
Right. I mean, generally speaking,
Ragnarok
as big
Online
as it
is free to play, right? No.
It's free to play now. It didn't used to be.
Yeah, generally speaking, about the biggest battles would get in EVE Online would be something on the order of like 1,200 people on one side versus 900 or 1,000 people on the other side, and that would be absolutely the biggest battles. I mean, they're not all like that, but in large-scale wars, you will see battles of that size over key systems where they're critical for, because I mean ultimately, I mean what has kind of been determined by people who've been playing the sovereignty game for a long time in EVE Online is that morale is ultimately the determinant of who wins and loses, rather than how many ships you destroy per se in game. Although that is another thing that's different about EVE Online. In other MMOs or most RPGs, when you die, you just come back where you were before you died. In EVE, if you're in a ship and it gets destroyed, that's it. The ship's gone. You have to buy another one. It doesn't come back. You don't get that ship back.
Yeah.
So there's much more of a penalty for getting blown up in EVE Online than there is for getting killed in most MMOs. But you've had battles that have raged in systems for 24, 36 hours straight, and you've had war campaigns that have lasted months and sometimes even years.
This actually brings me to a certain point that I want to get at. Like, nowadays you get all these like free-to-play MMOs that are popping out, and more specifically, one more recently that's obviously still in beta, Family Guy Online. Like, you got games like EVE Online out there, and even games like Ragnarok Online that are free-to-play that also have similar like territory battles out there that have like very deep. You have like servers that have entire stories, but obviously at Ragnarok not as large a level as EVE Online. Where do these other games like? What the hell are they even doing? Like, there's literally Family Guy Online where you're running around picking up fucking pieces of cloth to show Peter Griffin like that he can make a hat.
Yeah, and like, who's gonna play that though?
Well, no, but but once again, going back to like what Lorenzo said before, you're talking about like hardcore gamers versus like the general people. And the general people aren't going to go and try and learn how to play EVE Online.
I mean, it's like derisively called by people who find the difficulty curve far too daunting for new players. Spreadsheets online.
Yeah.
Not for nothing either.
Like, really, though,
But even on other levels, like, you got all these free-to-play MMOs that are popping out, like DC Universe, Star Trek Online's free now, too, and
Well, actually, on the
A
subject,
thing that I found kind of interesting is like when you guys were talking about like start EVE Online, you'd show up and like there's like just your ship in a vast universe in the starting area, and like there's no one else there. When I started Star Trek Online, I was in like the ship area, the starting ship area, and there was like thousands of people surrounding me to the point where I didn't even know where to go.
You didn't know what ship was yours.
Yeah. Too many people are all flying around in an Enterprise. It's just like, oh god, what the hell?
Why does anyone want an Enterprise?
well, actually, no. On the subject, I was going to say it's funny because the maker of EVE Online is actually working on a first-person shooter MMO that's set in the same universe.
Oh yeah,
as
the
EVE
PS3
Online
game. It's a
called
PS3 game.
Dust 514.
Yeah.
That's actually going to be released as a PS3 exclusive with an online functionality that allows multiplayer, and it's going to be like free to play with.
Apparently, you can get in ships. Like if you're on EVE Online or something, and I'm playing Dust 4 or whatever.
Yeah.
I could like get in a ship, and you can fly me to a planet, and I play on the planet.
That's awesome, but like they're gonna have to be really careful with how they integrate those because you have to understand that EVE
People that
Online
get blown
is
up
full
in
of
people's
really
ships.
bitter and really bitter trolls, and so that if
Well,
they
like
have the
the
possibility
United
to
States
screw
will
up
really
the
bitter trolls,
in-game
yeah.
universe for Dust 514 by like bombing the entire surface of a planet from orbit, they will just because they can.
Legit, yeah. I don't know. I still think it's gonna be a really cool concept. I'd probably try that out.
Yeah, I mean, like I've seen some of the stuff about Dust 514, and it looks like it's going to be really interesting, actually.
You got to know what's a good, I guess, MMO-ish shooter that I'm interested in playing?
Uh-oh.
Shoot Mania.
The hell is Shoot Mania?
Where does he come up with this shit?
I don't know. He knows all these weird fucking games that no one's ever fucking heard of.
It's because they're all on PC, man. No one owns PCs anymore, except everyone actually owns a PC.
Yeah, but no one games on them. Except
That's
me.
true.
But that's
And
gonna
me.
do the work. That's
Anyway.
true.
So what's this game like?
Shoot Mania? Oh, that was actually mostly a joke. I mean, there's
You
this
know
French
it, bro.
company that makes like these. They're planning on making this Mania game. It's like Mania Planet or something. But they originally made Track Mania, which was a racing game where people would build their own tracks, then they'd race on these tracks and do all kinds of stuff. Shoot Mania is basically, for some reason, it is a shooting game based in the same universe as a racing game somehow.
So it's
But
Twisted
it's
Metal.
MMO-ish kind of. I don't understand it, but it actually looks interesting from what I've heard.
So
But,
it's
like,
Twisted Metal.
No, not Twisted Metal, like first person shooter, but
And you race.
yeah.
That's weird.
No, it's in the same universe, but you're not racing. That's why this is so fucking crazy. It makes no sense. Do you see what I mean? It makes
Yeah,
no sense.
I'm fucking confused. So I mean, but then
Yeah.
again, grade 6 kids. So
Grade 6 kids. Nice.